בדרך הישר והרצוי אוי לפונה העלייה לבריבנו שום סינו
video, but he specifically asked me to save the
You got it. I got it.
There he is. Oh, watch out.
Saving it for
Oh, watch out.
No, you want someone's gonna make him a call. Somebody, the rabbi said, let's go make him a call. You wanna do it? You can do it.
Let's
give you this one.
Rabbi Reuven, how you doing, baby?
Move chairs over.
Yeah.
This is my position.
Position doesn't matter. The chairs don't matter.
The chairs.
position, huh?
What's your name?
It's fine. We met
Oh, we met before.
Yeah, yeah, I'm following my fence. Would have known.
Oh my God, did we talk out a week?
Yeah.
No, I'm looking for we had a week.
Yesterday, first time I turned it on, and they lost.
Yeah, they were playing meaningful games. They were playing meaningful games. They're hitting from all parts of the line.
Bring more for the on the tables. Bring those two of the things you show up.
You have Rabbi Foreman's books also. There's one on Pesach, one on Esther, the Queen of
And a half, yeah.
one on Pesach, the Exodus you almost passed over, and one on Kain, which haven't called something, Pesach HaMisrovate, something much in sin at the doors.
It's very good with words.
Fantastic.
Original.
So creative what he does, yeah. It's a certain kind of head, when you use a word in a different context.
Huh?
Well, yes, sir.
Up, what do you say, up, please, up?
I know you're probably forming up your schedule for next year, so the Boca people are on my case. They said they sent you some, they're very anxious to see if they can be Mossad. Did you hear from them?
I'll take a look.
Maybe someday, I think they're very anxious to see if they can work that Shabbos with you.
Small table, you know. Switched up the table to the rabbi's table, that's right.
Okay, good morning everybody, welcome. Page Yud Beis. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'achol nהיה b'dvareh.
How are you? Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Sorry about the pirates.
It's okay, it's not your fault.
Huh? Yeah?
There?
Reb Nuchem als beseder?
Was is alt, is even beseder.
Gewaldig. No, it's an honor to have you. This is mein Schwer. Huh? Angas mais.
It's very cold, but I know.
Both, or is that like, works together with Rabbi Bigler?
Lord, I think that's what we're No, Lord, Lord,
No,
it's
Rabbi
seven.
Bigler is, but here in Brooklyn.
Okay, page Yud Beis.
Connect from the wall.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Just put it in the back.
One arrow there. See, yeah, you gotta push on the arrow, no, not there, left, yeah.
Because you gotta switch it up.
Why doesn't somebody who knows how to do it do it? What do you have to give him instructions?
What else, guys?
It's a worker that they. Yeah. Now, put the arrow down. Yeah, go down, go seven.
Oh, now
Ah,
I put
Taza.
management, now that I did it, I appreciate you guys.
Beautiful.
Great job.
I'm available. Now you send the bill. Versify.
Memory.
Okay, page Yud Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 lines from the top. So at last we applied. I should mention that today is the yahrzeit of the author of this Maimer, Rabbi Hillel Paritcher. His yahrzeit is Yud Aleph Menachem Av of the year Tov Reish Chav Daled. That's 1864. So at last we have come to decode the mashal, the long mashal that has been explained, that when the teacher, in middle of his teaching, experiences this new flash of wisdom, this incredible, profound insight, and he must interrupt the communication with the student in order to grasp this new epiphany. And the interruption happens on 3 levels, in 3 stages. On the level of Chachma, where he senses the new insight, but at this point he can still wing it and continue to communicate, even if it's not with the same level of vitality. And in stage B, Bina, where he must already pay much more attention to the development of the new idea, and therefore his words may become confusing, and his inner thoughts, his new inner thoughts, may change the words, which the student will immediately realize that there's something off. And finally, in this third stage of Das, where the teacher will fall silent and all communication will stop, and the deeper he gets closer to the grasping, the more he gets close to the grasping of the new idea, the new hamtzah, the new epiphany, the new insight, the more the distance, the more the absence, the more the silence, to the point that there's no communication whatsoever, not even a gesture with the hand, not even wait for a moment, because he's now totally consumed by the new insight. What's from the teacher's perspective only the deepest desire to give his student everything, to give his student all truth. In other words, this is coming completely from the love to his Talmud. From the student's perspective, is perceived as absence, distance, detachment, and really, on some level, neglect or abandonment or even betrayal if he doesn't know who his teacher is. And as a result of that, there's 2 dimensions that are both very real. From the teacher's perspective, there is a deep closeness. This may be the deepest moment of closeness, because the entire experience is here just to give the teacher, the student, everything, even the deepest truth. And yet from the student's perspective, it's a moment of very powerful distance, and therefore there's a pain involved. And the 2 are dependent upon each other. They're not separate. It's 2 perspectives of the very same reality. And we can understand how this works in the mashal. If the teacher does not do this, if he just allows himself to continue being present, he will never ever be able to reach that state of consciousness and share that with the student. It may disappear, who knows for how long, maybe even forever. But here there's stage 1 and stage B, 2. Stage 1 is where the student is confused, meaning he doesn't know what's going on. All he sees is this blank look on the face of his teacher, who used to be so close to him and is gone. Stage 2 is when the teacher gets it, and the student sees that something positive happened in the world of the teacher. He doesn't have it yet, but there is a glow, what we call nihiru da anpin, a brightness on the face, a glow on the face in the teacher. He got it. And that glow itself gives comfort and solace to the student, who could now see that there's something positive happened, even though he or she did not get anything from it. Which, of course, in the Nimshal is the difference between Tlasa, the Poranisa, and Shiva, the Nechemta. Between the 3 weeks till Tisha B'Av and the 7 weeks that follow that. Because, as the language that was used from the Kesavim, from the writings of the Arizal, in the stage 1, Tlasa de Puranissa, there's the Histalkus, there is the ascent, the departure from the old Moichin, from the old state of awareness and therefore communication, on the 3 levels of Chachma Bina Das. But if we remember the language that was used all the way back in the beginning, it was that after that, you have the Zayin de Nechemta. After the Histalkus of Gimel Moichin Chabad, you have Zayin de Nechemta, which is Isgalus Moichin da Atika in the Midas of Zah, which means the revelation of the new level of Moichin in the Midas of Zah, meaning in the Midas of the Mashpia, in the experience of the teacher. Now we can understand what this means. The reason that there was the Histalkus of the Moichin is because of their perfection. They reached their ultimate state, Soif Maisa, and therefore what happens now is there is Eirus. There's a birth of Moichin Da'atika, of a new level of awareness in the teacher. That is what happens, and from that Hisairus, the old Moichin have to leave and dissipate. There has to be an ascent, a departure from it on 3 levels, Chachma Bina Das, and that's what allows for the revelation of the new Moichin. But the first revelation is where? In the 7 Midos of the Mashpia, after it reached this Chachma Bina Das, which creates a glow and creates the Nechama in the mind of the Makabel, who now has to get to the next stage, which is opening himself up for this new level of awareness. So that's what we continue now. V'lachein, Yud Beis, 5 lines from the top. V'lachein. How do we know that the Mashpia really got it? We saw that the departure was so drastic that even his external thoughts and words are not being communicated to the student. In other words, there is complete silence. Piska de Chiyusa, the entire lifeline has been interrupted. This is the simon, this is the sign that the new Moichin have been absorbed not only by his Chachma, by his Bina, but also by his Das. In other words, the muskel, the idea is completely ready in the mind of the Mashpia. Because that's what Das is. Das is the pratim that come after the Bina. And therefore, this idea is first revealed and manifested in the 7 midos of the mashpia, of the mentor, who's affected by it, who's moved by it. The new awareness affects him on a level of midos, which means it touches his core emotions and values. Because das is always the source, the key to midos. Das is always the intellectual intimacy, which makes the idea relevant. And because it becomes relevant, it becomes part of me, who I am. That's the das. Va'adam yada eschava. Chachma and bin, it could still be abstract and detached, but not das. V'ha'aras midoisav shalam mashpia shu nehiru da'anpin shaloi. And the light, the fact that it's glowing in his midos, which is called nehiru da'anpin. Nehiru da'anpin literally means, as I said, the light of his face. There's a glow on his face. Boikin, they burst forth. And this casts a glow, even if it's a superficial glow, on the recipient, on the student, that he should at least experience some solace, vikivui, and hope, and bitachon, and trust, al chazdei hamashpia, knowing the love of the mentor, that gives him the chizuk, the inspiration, the empowerment, the strength, even in a very dense darkness. Because momentarily at the moment, there was an interruption of the flow of vitality, as we explained. For him, the words of his Rebbe is his lifeline. He's a Talmud Muvik. He's completely committed not to miss a word. And there's tremendous pleasure and delight, and it all came to an abrupt interruption. And for him, this is you may call it a traumatic, a very deep void that's created. Im kol zehu maimin umekavel la'or gadol yosef kanal. Nonetheless, there is a nechama, there is a solace because he trusts, believes, and hopes that there's a new light coming, even though he knows nothing about this new light, because all he knows is that there was a lack of communication.
Is the Nehir Danpel, can you look at that? Is that like an indicator light that Das has now gotten the job, that it went to the Das Mashpia?
Yeah.
So like when you charge a thing and the indicator
Yeah.
light goes on, you shake
Yeah.
it,
Right.
it's the light that
Right.
Das now
Right.
controls as well.
Huh?
Yeah, it's just like a light that tells you it's fully charged. It
Yeah.
reads Das also.
Yeah. 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 Huh?
Just looking at that light.
Oh, fully charged, yeah. V'achar kach, and afterwards, hamakif hazeh beikeya b'hamakabel gam b'pnimiyusa. Then could come the next stage where this makif, meaning this light which is still in a state of makif, it has not permeated the student, but ultimately it can burst through and be internalized by him, meaning sheyechaven moichay v'libo lekabolas chadashas. Now he needs to direct his mind and his heart to receive the new, the chadashas. He's taka a good student, very good student, but to be makabel the chadashas, the new insight, the new epiphany, now he has to redirect his moyach and his leiv. V'hachanu hu bebeis inyanim, and the preparation is always in two stages. Aleph, number one, shenifne moiche v'liboy mikol machshavos avaskalois avakoidmim sheyeh klei rekan legamri. For his mind and heart to become vacant of previous thoughts and ideas, to become a truly empty vessel, even relative to the emptiness, to the openness that he had previously. V'habeis, number two, shemiskarev es atzmi al hamashpia lishmoya mipi Rabbi, he has to become close, emotionally and conceptually completely close to the mentor, tune in to hear from his Rebbe the new insight. Al derech, similar to the expression of Chazal, asay oznecha kafre cheses. To make your ear like a, anybody knows the translation, afre cheses? Ah? A receiver, yeah. What? Yeah, like a funnel, a vessel that is completely tuned in to be able to channel the words through him. His ears are completely become a conduit. A conduit, you're looking up the translation, thank you. A conduit to be able to receive this information. So there's two stages of preparation. Stage number one is going away, stepping away. Huh? A receiver. Afreches is a receiver. One is stepping away from the old, and the second is tuning into the new. Stepping away from the old means carving out the empty space, a clay reikon, even from the previous level of awareness. That's step one. That's like sur meira, that's like what not, but that's not enough. That's big, that's the prerequisite. But step number two is now hiskarif, to become close, to tune really in to the mentor, to be able to receive this new experience. These are the two hafshatas. We spoke before about two hafshatas, two new experiences, two new hafshatas, two new strippings of the previous layers. Number one, we called hanachas atzmusai, or hanachas kol atzmusai, which is what he's saying here. Suspending everything, putting the self on the side, carving out an emptiness, an openness, which is an emptiness, klei reikon, an openness to the new idea, and removing anything else that's there. And number two, opening yourself up, becoming close to become what we call nekuda tachas hayisoid, that I am completely tuned into the new awareness. For you. You're asking, usually when you learn, you want to hold on to the previous because it just adds to that, right? Right. So the Gemara says about Baba Metzia that Reb Zera, Kisalik L'Ada di Yisrael, yeah, some Memtan Nisa, or another Gersa Meyatan Nisa, L'Shtakach Menei Talmud Bavli. Reb Zera, when he was going to Eretz Yisrael, he fasted 40 fasts or something, 100 fasts. So you should forget Talmud Bavli. So he should be able to understand Talmud Yerushalmi. Now imagine somebody tells you he knows the whole Talmud Bavli, but he wants to start learning Yerushalmi. You're going to tell him, fast for half a year so you forget everything. On the contrary, right? But the truth is that because there's learning and there's learning. Reb Zera understood that the Derech HaLimud of Talmud Yerushalmi is a different Derech HaLimud. It's a completely different paradigm way. And the remembering Talmud Bavli, it's not that he had to forget the facts. You're talking about real learning. The paradigms, the Yesodus would obstruct and interfere the ability to be able to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. So he pushed it fasted. Imagine 100 fasts. 100 fasts to go through a metamorphosis to be able to be ready for a new Derech HaLimud.
Much like she works, because when Rabbi comes up with a new Einfall in the Sugya, the halachas of the Sugya don't say, Rabbi still says this, Roa still says this. He's giving you a different whole way of looking at the stuff that's in the Sugya. See, you're not really...
Right.
It's a new Einfall, but the facts...
So you're not moving away from facts that you learned that are Torah's emes, that are timeless. You understand? You're moving away from the certain ways, a certain bias, certain perception, certain perspective, certain paradigms that ultimately will interfere with the new reality, the new experience. To understand what these two stages are, you can always understand something from what it's not, from what's not, from the lack of it. Right? In other words, this is very interesting. When you want to understand something, so understand what's missing without it. If you'll explain to me what's missing without it, so then I'll understand what the contribution is. If you just talk about something, and if this was missing, nothing. So that means it's nothing. You always understand something, and what if I wouldn't have this? And then you can measure always the contribution of it, right? When you see the lack, the header, so then just like we know when somebody's missing something, they often appreciate what they have, because until you don't, like the pasuk says, "Vayomer lo Yohanes and Macher Chodesh v'nifkadeta ki yipaked Moshevecha." Yonason tells his best friend David, tomorrow, Rosh Chodesh, you will be remembered because your seat will be absent. Sometimes it takes a seat to be absent to remember somebody. Sometimes people are not remembered when they're there, right? You see them, you take it for granted. You take them for granted. V'nifkadeta, you become remembered. Ki yipaked Moshevecha. It's a very real idea, sometimes a sad idea. Also, yeah. Yeah, that's on another level. They also become holy. So, but the truth is, in everything in life, it's that way. When it's not here, I can appreciate it. But here we're talking about a concept sometimes. When you want to understand something, you want to appreciate, in other words, see really what it is, see what's lacking without it. So he says, Yosef will understand them much better, from the lack of it. Let's see what's a student that doesn't have this. Let's talk about a student who doesn't have these things. What is it like? He doesn't have it. He says, Yeshmi sheshemeya hetiv. Sometimes you have a student, he listens well, v'kailet, and he absorbs, afilu oisena oisius she'ena muvanim lai, which is a big chiddush. He's ready to absorb letters and words that he doesn't understand. Rak sheyetzu yatzu mipi Rabbi. As long as they left his Rebbe's mouth, he will listen to them, he will absorb them, which is already a certain madrega, because you have somebody, if I don't understand it, I just shut down. Anybody knows that experience? In other words, I'm not really committed. I don't have, skin in the game. I don't have skin in the game. As long as it's working, it's nice, it's fulfilling me, good. The moment It's like, whoa, okay, I'm done. Have a wonderful day. I tune out. That's why there's iPhones. And I go do my own thing. If at some point you're going to come back and you're going to entertain me again, I'm in. So he says that he's not even talking about. That's bichlal eina oila al shulchan. That's the person is stam. It's not called a student. This is called entertainment. Entertainment. But here we're talking about a person. He's going to listen to words that he doesn't understand. That's a deep thing. Why? Because they came out of the mouth of his Rebbe. He understands that he still needs to be medaktik. He needs to understand them. He needs to relate to them. What he will not do is divest himself, literally strip himself. Mafshit means strip himself. That's what it is, removing. He will not strip himself from his previous haskalas, from his previous ways of looking at things. Ba'ofen shekol yidi oisav, listen to these words, incredible. Ba'ofen shekol yidi oisav asagoisav b'divrei Rabbi hurak al pi yidi oisav hakoidmas. He will only allow his entire appreciation of the words of his Rebbe based on what he knows before. His preconceived notions and paradigms remain the defining containers that qualify and reveal and explain all the words. In other words, they have to fit into my filing cabinet. I have a filing cabinet. The filing cabinet has been developed over 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 years. And the words, I'm in. And I'll listen even to words that I don't understand. But I'm going to approach it based on everything I know from before, and that's how I will absorb the new ideas. V'lachein lo yagia ledas Rabbi kolkach k'may misha mafshit es atzmai mikol yedei Yosef hakoidmim v'roitza leida divrei Rabbi al pikavonas Rabbi bulvad. And therefore, he will be successful, but he will never reach an understanding, an awareness in the words of his teacher like the other student who's ready to strip himself from all the knowledge that he has before and is actually trying to tune into what his Rebbe is saying, not his appreciation and understanding of it.
The knowledge he had before is not contradicting the new knowledge he's getting. It's not like we have two conflicting...
But apparently sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. It does not allow me to really, really tune in to a whole new perspective, which means there is growth that's incremental, right? I know something today, you'll add something new, and then on the contrary, like you said, I want to bring everything I know to the table. But sometimes there's a truth that, what's the Lashon in Tehillim? Could you pass that siddur, please? Balatanya says, it says in Tehillim Memhei, Shimi vas uri'i v'hati aznech. Listen, my daughter, look, and hati aznech, bring your ear over. Incline your ear, very good. Hati aznech. V'shichechi amech ubeis avich. And forget about your nation and the house of your father. V'yisav hamelech yafyech. So the king can crave your beauty. Memhei. What's this? V'shichechi amech ubeis avich. V'yisav hamelech yafyech. The truth is, it's what Hashem tells Avram. Lech lecha me'yartzach mladcha ubeis avicha la'artz asherek. Now this is a very deep idea. And frankly, this is not an easy idea what he's saying here. We're not talking here about a guy who's an addict and he's drinking alcohol every night for 3-4 hours and gambling and then on the web for the rest of the night. And you're telling him that as long as you're going to continue this lifestyle, you're going to destroy yourself. You really have to go cold turkey and abstain. Over there, it's very hard to argue. I mean, unless you're an addict, you're not going to argue with this, right? Everybody understands that, and even if you're an addict, you probably can't really argue with it if you're being honest, which is of course hard for an addict. But here we're talking about a completely different idea. It's rooted in the same idea, and that is this Talmud. Everything is good. He's a real student. He's a real student, and as a real student, his mind is filled with wonderful information. But that's what MS is. What truth demands is that ability to be able to allow every paradigm in me to be challenged, to open myself up completely. And that's why I called it Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh doesn't always mean you sacrificing your life physically, but sometimes mental Mesiras Nefesh is very, very intense. It's very powerful. Can I truly, truly step away from all of my paradigms and preconceived notions and open myself up to something new? It's not hard. It's very hard. You know why? It means a certain admission that everything I built up really now has to be moved to the side for a whole new reality, for an unprecedented reality. In life, this is a very difficult thing to do. Sometimes you could see it with parents and children. If I have been relating to my children a certain way, and at some point a person realizes they made a very big mistake, the greatest resistance comes from the fact, can one admit that 20, 30 years have been based on my insecurities, my traumas, maybe my good intentions, but I was clueless, I was ignorant? It's too hard. I'm going to fight till the last moment. And even if I hear new things, great. But as long as they fit in to the filing cabinet, I have no problem. If it's a good vart, and I could put it somewhere in, but I have to find a place in the brain for it. And if I have no place, what do? I say the guy is a lunatic, the guy is an extremist, the guy is an apikoris, the guy is a weirdo. We have all these words to be able to allow ourselves to remain safe, right? If what,
Become not vulnerable.
Yeah, I'm a chaya. If I could find a place in the file for it, I'm good. But even if I don't understand it yet, I'm tuned in. I'm not so selective. I'll listen. But I take it from where I was. In other words, I'm ready to listen to you as long as it fits into my previous paradigms. He's a wonderful person, but a Talmud he'll never be. A real Talmud he'll never be. A Talmud Muvik. What says a Talmud Muvik? Talmud Muvik means all I want is truth. I want the truth of my teacher. I want the truth. I want the real, unadulterated, raw truth, whatever its consequences. And if that means I have to look in the mirror and say, whatever I have to say, that's fine. Even though that's painful, there may be a lot of tears in that. That's what a klei reikon is. Klei reikon is not a small thing. That's what hanochas atzmusa means. Hanochas atzmusa means to take my entire atzmius. And hanochas atzmusa is I carve out an empty space, a complete emptiness. There's an old Chassidic interpretation. There's a Mishnah in Chagiga. Kelim hanigmarin betahara tzrichim tvila lekoidish. Literally it means kelim, vessels, hanigmarim, when they were completed, when the silversmith or the blacksmith or the goldsmith completed their development in purity, because a keli utensil is susceptible to tumah, but only after it's complete. When you're still making a pot, it's not mekabel tumah. Only when it's done and it's worthy to use, it can be mekabel tumah, because a vessel is not susceptible to tumah until a person actually can use it or uses it. Until it's complete. If I'm still in the middle of I still have to put the handle, or I still want to make a design, even though it looks complete, it's not mekabel tumah, right? If a dead mouse falls into it, it's not mekabel tumah. So kelim hanegmarim betara, the Mishnah says, if I finish it and I finish it with purity, tzrichem tvila lekodesh. If you want to put a carbon inside, you have to put it in the mikveh. Why? So literally it means because for karbanas they were so strict that it should be pure, that even though I decided to finish it and I finished it with purity, I made sure I was pure, so my contact with it was pure, but for karbanas it still needs to go to the mikveh. Tzrichem tvila lekodesh. There's a homiletical interpretation. Kelim hanegmarim betara. When somebody feels that he's a keli gomor, he's a complete keli, and he's a pure keli, tzichet tefillah l'kodesh. If he wants to absorb kodesh, he needs to be submerged himself completely. And you know, when you're submerged under the water at that moment, you lose like a person. Under the water you can't live. It's a certain hefsek hachayas, it's a certain interruption of life, even though we're talking here about a keli. But the concept of tefillah means a new betzias. The person coming out of the mikveh is like a transformation. You need a new transformation l'kodesh. Sometimes this is where it becomes tricky. If the Talmud wasn't ripe, if he wasn't Nigmar Batara, if he wasn't a real Talmud, it's not so easy to dismiss my old paradigms. But if I was a good Talmud, so my paradigm seems so beautiful. My paradigm seems so educated. So now to be able to become an empty vessel becomes much more difficult. Sometimes you have a person, you speak to them, they confess ignorance inside. In other words, they know, I don't know anything. I'm a blank slate, right? Elisha ben Avuya says, Diyoy ksuva al nayar chadash. I'm a blank, fresh piece of papyrus or paper, Papyrus, yeah. It's the one statement that Chazal bring from Elisha ben Avuya, right, in Pirkei Avos, Perek Daled. Elisha said, Haloi meTorah yeled l'mahu doima. Teaching Torah to a child is like what? Is like ink written on fresh paper. But Haloi meTorah zaken, if you're only learning Torah as an old man, then it's Diyoi ksuva al nayar machok. You know, that piece of paper was written and erased and written and erased and erased and erased, and now you get a couple of letters on it, but it's not fresh. Yeah. There was once a Fabrang in Shabbos, so the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, what's the message? What is he trying to say? What is he trying to say? It's a nice thing to say, teach Torah to your child as a child. But what happens if nobody taught me as a child? So what is he trying to say? Nebach, your Torah is verhakt. It's not really going to go in. Like, what's the statement? What is he trying to say? It's a good thing to say, to teach Torah to a child. Learn Torah as a child. So that's what he should say. But he says, no, Haloima Torah Zaken. Is this an encouraging statement? Somebody didn't have a schus to learn Torah till 40, till 50, till had the kasha. The kasha is euch git for dir. Fide teretz. Kasha is euch git. A Jew who didn't have the opportunity to learn Torah till he was 60 years old. So he's learning Pirkei Avos, and basically the message is, it's erased paper. You're wasting your time because nothing is going to get absorbed. Besides the fact, you really need Pirkei Avos for this. Everybody knows what you learn at 3 years old, you remember for life. And what you learn at 61, you forget a few seconds later. Present company excluded. We all know what children are capable of learning. We know how many languages you can teach a child. I mean, we dumb them down usually. But you know what children are fertile, wet sponges. They can learn everything. You don't need a Mishnah Pirkei Avos for this. Everybody knows this. Once you hit a certain age, it comes a hakdara, and it takes a very long time. It's not so easy. So the Rebbe said Elisha ben Avuya was actually saying something very profound. At any age, he's talking about any age. At any age, you could learn Torah as a child, or you could learn Torah as an old person. Even when you're 80 years old, you could learn Torah as a child, you can learn Torah as a zakah. That's what he's saying. He's not trying to discourage people who never had an opportunity to learn. He's trying to create a paradigm of how you learn. It's two different ways of learning. Loimed, the highest of art. Loimed Torah zakah, huh? You see, he's been learning this Mishnah, and it was a discouraging Mishnah. Because his whole life, At what age did you come to start learning Torah? Very good. Good. You were listening. The Yidah Kaddish. This was Emes.
This is all compared to a Baal Tshuva.
Yeah.
Every day we should become a new Baal Tshuva.
A new Baal Tshuva, yeah, that's what he's saying. But Chol Yom Yeh Beinach HaKachadarshem. It's an attitude. In other words, really a clean slate. To be a clean slate. But how do I even become a clean slate? In other words, me telling myself that I'm a clean slate may be part of the problem. Because that itself, I'm a clean slate because I am a clean slate. This is where a person often needs to allow themselves to be challenged. And when I'm uncomfortable with something, when I find myself resisting and uncomfortable, so I have to ask myself very deeply, is this resistance actually an invitation to be able to let go of the old and open to the new? Now,
this student who just finished hearing this unbelievable shiur, Mele, it's not even the first time he came in the morning. He just heard this unbelievable shiur, and now you're telling him, forget everything for the last 6 hours. Yeah. Because the paradigms that were guiding your way of understanding the world, that allowed you to understand the previous shiur, will become the greatest interference and static
to understand the new shir, which is the reason that your Rebbe had to interrupt the shir. He also had to interrupt it. Why? Because he himself needed a new experience. He couldn't continue winging it. He himself had to depart from the old to get the new. So you think you don't have to depart from the old to get the new? But here's where it becomes tricky. Yesterday's redemption becomes today's exile. Yesterday's expansiveness becomes today's trap. Yesterday's awareness becomes the greatest static for a new level of awareness. And at some stage in life, a person is inclined to say, enough. I've already gone out. I already went to my therapies. I already got out of all my stuff. Enough. I graduated. Ooh, Elisha ben Avuya says, you graduated, that's the beginning of the end. If you graduated, fine. Now you could say goodbye. You could say Kaddish on yourself. Huh?
Rabbi Feldman's story that you like.
Emmanuel from Atlanta.
Isn't that exhausting?
Huh?
It's exhausting.
On one level, it's exhausting if you're arrogant. If you're humble, it's the most refreshing thing in the world. If I'm arrogant, it's very exhausting because my arrogance is always challenged by it. But if I become humble, if life is about truth and openness to truth, then it's the most refreshing thing in the world. Because it allows myself for newness, real newness. And you know, very often in life, it's a real question you have to ask yourself. Am I really, really open to something completely new? So if I was involved in shtussim and narishkeit and nonsense my whole life, of course I'm open to something new. But here's where the challenge is. I was listening to good things my whole life. And I thought I was mamish barking up the right tree. And then to say, but now it's time to be able to transcend yourself. And to be able to discover something, there's something much, much deeper. But if you want to get that, you could get it on your terms. But on your terms will never be on its terms. On your terms means, you know, it works for you. Or what we call, it's a good vart. It's a good vart that fits into the whole roster of Vertlach, you know. So I have another vart, another shir, another vart. Or I can allow myself to be transformed by the information. And to be transformed requires a tremendous sense of humility that is very, very deep. Do you understand what I'm saying? Rabbi Isaac, du verstehst? You understand how hard it is? You understand why people resist it? I'll fight against this. People will... It's professing failure. And by the way, even if consciously you say, no, of course, I'm talking subconsciously, I'm not talking consciously. Consciously, you're a good guy. You say, of course I want to hear. But subconsciously, I will kill. I will kill every new insight. I will make sure to somehow make it work with my system. You want me really to say that I should become a new person? You want me now to be a 1-year-old child? Yeah, a 1-year-old child. A 1-year-old child. You know that 1-year-old child, we were doing that meditation, right, who looks at the raisin and doesn't know what it is. Can I do that? Can I look at this like for 40 minutes, you know, like the baby in the crib, and turn it around and say, this is a waste of time. I know what it is. If you think it's a waste of time, you're stuck. It's a waste. I know what it is. I know what it is. Really, you know what it is. Okay. If you know what it is, then that's where you're going to stay. You'll know what it is, and the whole world, you'll know what it is. And everything will fit into that. If I could say, I know nothing. I'm starting. I'm a haloi mitayre yeled. This is mamish, a clean slate. Teach me. Teach me truth. Teach me life. Be open. This is the uniqueness of a child. It's the curiosity, it's the inquisitiveness. Most importantly, it's the humility. It's not distorting information based on previous paradigms. Now, let's face it, the greatest source of distortion are inner traumas and inner dispositions, because we relate to the world from certain glasses. I put on these glasses, I never take them off. These glasses I take off, but there's deeper glasses I don't take off. And everything I see through these glasses. Now, sometimes a person went through a transformation in their life. My father-in-law mentioned a Baal Tshuva. Baal Tshuva went through a major transformation in his or her life. And that's a unique transformation that an FFB, so to speak, did not have to go through that transformation. So if I went through, and even FFBs, I don't like those words, but even somebody who had to work on themselves and grew to a particular place, here, in a way, and take this with sensitivity, the danger becomes worse. The danger is, ich bin shana keli hanigma betara. There's so much perfection here. There's so much good. In a way, you become the worst clipper. I don't mean you. I mean, you understand why, right? Because it's like, you become a real shell, a real husk, because you have so much to back it. You have so much opium. You have so much religion behind you. You know, you have quotes. As long as you don't have quotes to support your stuckness, so you're pretty good. The moment to have quotes and sources and proofs, but he said, but that one said, this one said, but. So I could remain so powerfully stuck in my own quagmire, which actually may work, and that's what he says. The student will absorb everything, but only on his terms. You can't compare it to somebody else who's really tuned in to what the emes is, what the truth is.
It won't penetrate his das, presumably.
He
may get a little chachma out of
something. Even if it's das, but it's going to be the das that he molds and he and which is nice. It's nice, but it's not the truth of the idea. And this is
Is the same paradigm applies to the teacher? For example, when
of course.
he brings in super challenge,
Of course, a teacher will never inspire this in the student if he's not challenging himself on the same level.
That was part two. That was of the three things that caused the teacher to get to the sororous, the recoil from the ideas colliding with the student. That was the second.
He has to be ready to reinvent himself. In fact, this is what happened in this story, because he was giving a beautiful shir. Everything was dandy. But then he realized that there's something completely different, and he had to grow silent, which is not easy for him. He himself had to forget himself and his connection. So if he's not open to it, he will not inspire that in the student. You know, there's no such a thing that there was once a big mashpia in Chabad. His name was Reb Nissen Nemenov. So he once said that the Lubavitcher Rebbe told him personally, he says, As men mont epis von a Talmud, darf men monnen von sich, lechol apoches kiflayim, doppelt. When you demand something, you're challenging your student in a way, you have to ask of yourself at least double. At least, minimum. In other words, to challenge yourself on the same level is shit that's not going to work. Because if you're the mentor, you're in a higher space, at least double. But it's a very profound idea, because it's not like, okay, you grow, and I'll remain in the ivory tower, eat cholent, and I'll watch you grow. It doesn't work that way. And that's when all trust is lost. So 100%. What did you want to ask?
How does all this work with the way we've been learning for thousands of years of this fighting back and forth, this chavrusa, this arguing, this bringing what I know, this trying to knock down the other guy to show what's the truth, getting to the truth, as opposed to being open and not having this fight.
Fight is the battle.
I don't know. I never heard of this way of learning that you described it. What Bavli? I don't. What's Bavli Hashem? I don't think it's a. Metaynitzich. Nobody wants to win. Nobody wants to win.
I'm saying the whole paradigm of a chavrusa, which is unique to our way of learning, is against this
stubbornness in what you believe,
and bringing what you know.
Once you get to the truth, then you
But
you can have that with still willingness to say, I'm going to give it all up.
You can't come with nothing. You can't sit there with nothing and then have the same idea of bringing everything you know to try to get to the truth against what this person is telling you.
You mean because
what your chavrusa is telling you?
You mean because your chavrusa won't be impressed? Why?
No.
if you're honest, then you give in and you go further.
If the fighting of the argument in the chavrusa is just because I have to hold on to my point, then what type of learning is that? Okay, so.
There's a difference between legal and
So Rabbi, what you're saying is that
Yeah.
You have different opinions, and everybody's experience as far as he is concerned, that's the emes, that's the truth. The other person sees it maybe from a different perspective. He's chesed, he's gevura, whatever the perspective is. But when it comes to Hasidus, when it comes to Pnivis, then there's no So there's room for both, in other words. There's a real Chassidus.
Rabbi and Talmud Mufak is a different relationship also.
Of course, yeah.
There's no
That could be.
Yeah. V'yesh mi shemafshit es atzmai b'yoser umaniach u'mesalek id Yosef hakoidmen. So this is the first stage in allowing the student the openness to be able to ultimately absorb the new idea. If this doesn't happen, the new idea will never be able to really come in. How does one even begin to do this? How does one even begin to do this? I think we begin to do this simply by the knowledge of this fact, the knowledge, the awareness of this concept, that to allow myself to be moved in a way that I don't have to impose my interpretation. The challenge is that how do I even do this? Like, I'm always going to impose my interpretation. Like, I'll allow myself to be moved the way I want to be moved. So how does one really, it's like, almost seems like a vicious cycle, because my eye is always there, right? I'm open to you based on my openness to you. Like, no, I'm really open. Yeah, I'm really open based on who I am. Like, that ability to really, it has to come from a very deep, deep place that can observe how I'm responding to things. That's really, I think, where one can begin to get a hold of this. Like, you really have to go backstage, so to speak. Go to like a very deep place in your mind that can that can observe how you're responding to it. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing with this information? Am I manipulating it, or am I not manipulating it? That's the idea of 100 fasts. 100 fasts means that he understood that with his mind, it's too tricky. He will not be able to do it. He will not be able to do it because all the information is already clouded. The Bzeda?
Yeah, was wird mit der Talmud Bavli? No, okay.
It's a geworden a Talmud Yerushalmi. Most people wouldn't even understand it today because the way we learn today is mostly fact. So what's the Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi? Another svar, another kash, another answer. The way that Mirayim learned was, there was a derech halimud, there were paradigms of comprehension that Talmud Yerushalmi and Talmud Bavli are two different worlds. You're like in a different planet. Different planet, different rules, different way of thinking. It's hard for us to understand this even.
I'm saying, but at the end he has it both.
No, he gave up.
No, he didn't give up nothing.
Well,
That's what I'm saying. At the end, the student is going to have it all. At the end, the student's getting it all. He gets the gift. Then it gets become a gift.
Yeah.
I think. What do you mean? He's not. He's doing Messiah's Nefesh to get to the new one, but he's not giving up the old, really. I don't know, he gets it, maybe.
Did he go back? Afterwards, he forgot to show me to go back to Bavli?
Different paradigms. It's a different paradigm.
Right, so now he has both paradigms.
Maybe, but based on the second one now. Based much more on the second shift.
You're saying that
Maybe
He already moved off the first shift to go
Maybe
to
it
the
is
second place.
incremental.
Is there a way
Maybe it
to
is
have two
incremental, but he
paradigms at once?
but he
Maybe you
can't.
have both
He
paradigms.
can't remind it as the verb. He can't develop
That's
it
elevated,
incrementally.
yeah.
But when he's
This
finished with
paradigm,
everything, he
that
can still be
paradigm.
incremental in Mitzias, but his path can't be incremental.
Yeah.
He has to learn it in a non-incremental way. But in the end, what he's left with might be taka something, Tiferes bring together the Chesed and Gvura.
So the process here is a very profound one. Like in this mashal, what happened? The teacher was in a good place. The student was in a good place. There was an intimacy. There was communication. There was life being communicated, and it was amazing. It was incredible. And then that all came to a brutal end, a very brutal end. For the teacher, for the student, what really happened is, I'm left with nothing now. The old idea is gone, a new idea I have not, and I'm not gone, my teacher is gone, everything is gone. If there's no trust, he runs away. He runs away, that's it, I'm done. And he tries to fill the void other ways. if he's a real student, he remains. And in that stage, there's stage one, the tlosa de puronissa, where there's just concealment. Concealment is the new idea just came into the world. A new light came into the world, and that new light is overwhelming. And if the teacher and I remain in the same paradigm, we'll never grasp it, and therefore he moves away from the old paradigm, and I'm left, right? What was the expression? Hanging dry, so to speak. I feel that way, but really what's happening is a new awareness was born in the world. And if I ever want to grasp that awareness, I have to go through this stage. Because if I remain, and the teacher remains in the old stage, this new light will be lost. We call this the light of Mashiach, the light of Geula, the light of a Beis HaMikdash, right? That new light. But at this stage, the new light, we explained in the last shir, a very important Friday shir, why Tisha B'Av Mashiach was born. It's the new light. But that light comes with a destruction. Always a destruction. That's very, very powerful and very painful, very painful. Shiva de Nechemta is, I don't have the new light yet, but I could see that there's a light. I could see it on my teacher. And that gives me hope. But now I have to open myself up to the new light. So that's already stage B, and that openness is going to require a lot. Because if it wouldn't require a lot, it's not a new light, it's part of the old light. So, we have here the model of a teacher and a student, but the concept is always existing in life. The concept exists in so many areas in life. The essay I sent out for Shabbos, some of you got it. When the cracks show up in your life, it's time to let the new light in. What does that mean? You'll have it, for example, with your relationship with children sometimes. That's a challenge a lot of people have. As I said before, you educated your children, you tried hard, you're a wonderful father, you're a wonderful mother, everything is good. Suddenly there's cracks everywhere. There's cracks everywhere. And what am I left with? I'm left with confusion, uncertainty. I don't know what's happening. And then sometimes there's darkness, there's negativity, there's detachment. Yeah? Your child somehow disassociates from you, or you find yourself disassociating from your child. What's happening now? Most people would say this is the darkest moment. And there's a good reason for that. We call Tisha B'Av the darkest day. Comes Chassidus and says, it's the darkest moment because it's also the brightest moment. That's such a powerful idea. It's the darkest moment. There's no denying that. We're not in La La Land, but it's because it's the brightest moment, because a new light just set into the world. And because a new light just set into the world, the old light got to go. The old clarity got to go. What am I left with? Nothing. I'm mamish left hanging. It's between one yesh and another yesh. There's a complete ayin. It's the seed that decomposes in the ground before it can grow. We spoke yesterday, right? That seed has to go through a major bittul. It got to be thrown into the pit and decomposed, not once but many times. And what happens in that decomposition? You look at the scene like Nebuch. Wait. You give me 70 years. Or 10 years, 5 years. You'll have the most delicious apples, dates, and figs for me. The point is, at the moment of decomposition, you're left with nothing. You're left with nothing. But that's the moment. That's the moment that the seed opens up itself to a space where it can become a source of tremendous vegetation and produce. That moment of darkness, that moment of confusion, I don't know what to do. There's complete uncertainty. You know why? Because a new light was just born. And for the new light to be absorbed, the old light got to go. A person has this experience. I didn't give this metaphor with children in the essay, but a person has this experience in a marriage. There's a marriage, it seems blissful, all is good, and suddenly crack, the wall is now falling apart in the house. At one level, you could say it's all over. But if you understand the pnimiyus, this may be the best moment, a painful moment, but the best one. Why the best moment? Because this is challenging you to a new light. Yes, maybe you were living in La La Land in a very shallow place. The same is true your relationship with Hashem, your relationship with yourself, and almost in every area of life, in every single area. Take happiness, right? It's those moments of darkness that can be seen in two ways. It's darkness, or there's a new light that God wants me to have. And this new light means that the old light got to go, because the old light is what's interfering to the new light. It's like the old structure doesn't allow your house to be an expanded house. So you have to demolish the structure, break down the walls to create space. But breaking down walls is not fun, especially knowing the contractor who will not rebuild them so fast. So it's always a very difficult moment, but it's always the greatest moment. What do you do to hold on during those moments? What do you do? What do you do to hold on? That's what Shiva de Nechemta. Shiva de Nechemta is, I don't know how it's going to work, but I know it's going to work. I know that there's a light. I could see that there's a light. Now I have to open myself up to it.
Rosh Hashanah, actually every month, the moon disappears, and then something new comes in.
Yeah.
Rosh Hashanah is for the whole year until.
Yeah, very well.
A period of time, afternoon, before Rosh Hashanah comes in, that it's like you have the old year passed and the new year hasn't started.
Yeah.
In a sort of a limbo time.
Yeah. When you speak about Rosh Chodesh, what's Rosh Chodesh? Chodesh is the new month. You can't see the moon. You know why you can't see the moon? Because it's actually in closest proximity to the sun. What allows us to see light on the moon? Reflection of the sun. When is the moon in a perfect position where there's a straight line of the sun, the moon, and the earth? The moment that there's what is it called? Alignment of the sun, the moon, and the earth, that's called the Moilad. The moon is reborn. And at that moment, you'll never see the moon. You'll never see the moon. When are you going to see the moon? When it grows distant from the sun. It starts moving away from the sun. If you have the sun here, and the moon here, and the earth here, so the moon is facing the sun completely. So the half of the moon that's receiving light from the sun, we don't see. So that's the time when the sun is mamish giving all the light to the moon. It's in its closest proximity from the whole month. The 15th of the month, when there's the most light, it's the furthest away. The 15th of the month, the sun is here, the earth is here, and the moon is here. So we get a perfect image of the sun, of the moon. Rosh Chodesh, right? We call Moilad Halavana, you don't see it. Why don't you see it? Because it's reflecting the sun. It's like reborn. It's completely in touch with the sun. What does it look to me like? Darkness. When it moves away from the sun, when it gets this, suddenly I have the light. Isn't that a funny thing? Yeah. With your own sun as well. Yeah. It's interesting how Jewish months work. The numbers go up. Tesvav, 15, the moon eclipse wanes, but the numbers still go up. Tezayin, Yud Zayin, Yud Ches, Yud Tes, right? All the way up. You would think that it should start going down. Because when it goes up, it really means it's more, but it's not really more, it's less. It's following the moon. But the truth is, what do you mean by more and less? It's really going up. The moon is becoming smaller. But why is it becoming smaller? It's becoming smaller because it's getting closer to the source. And whenever it gets closer to the source, the old light is being diminished. So if I remain removed from the source, I have amazing light. When I get closer to the source, the light gets more and more and more diminished. Yeah. I'm waiting for the new rebirth, the Moilad. Rebirth means I'm becoming a child again. And how do I become a child? I become smaller and smaller, I have less light and less light because I'm experiencing more of the source. And because there's more of the source, therefore my light is being diminished.
You need the mental. You have to lose yourself.
And then in that moment of rebirth, you don't see the moon. You don't see the moon at all. And then when it moves away, you could start seeing the light. So in terms of the light of the moon, it's getting diminished. In terms of the relationship with the source, it's getting more and closer and closer and closer. So whenever there's a new light, a light from the source, the old light is diminished. And the more it's diminished, the more there's a new light. Like this teacher, the more his absorption of the new light, the less the communication. And the communication wanes, and it gets less and less and less and less until it disappears. Why did it disappear? This is the moment of rebirth. This is the moment of the moila. The reason the light disappeared, he stopped talking to me, is why? Because he just got the new light. Till now, he didn't get the new light completely. He just had an intuition of it, so he could continue teaching. In other words, he could still reflect light. He could still be the moon. The moment when he gets the real light, we call it the moilad. The moilad, he's perfectly aligned with the sun. What happens? He grows dark. I see nothing, 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 nothing. It's the worst moment, and it's the best moment. It was the best of times and the worst of times. And it's exactly the same thing. The worst time was, the worst of times was the best of times. But at this point, I don't feel it. All I see is a dark moon. I don't see anything. So I'm left in the darkness. Why am I left in the darkness? Because the moon just absorbed a completely new light. And the moon wants to give it to me, but not yet. So at this moment, I'm left with nothing. All I'm left is with cracks, confusion, uncertainty, a lot of pain. However, if I trust and I stay with the program and I stick it out and I invest in the process, what happens is I open myself up to a new light, Gewalt. And when you open yourself up to a new light, everything is changed forever. Very good. Haloi meteire yeled, haloi meteire zaken. The Hest? People come to a shiur, right? They're often cynical. They heard everything. What are you going to teach me? Rabbi, why? What are you going to teach me? Noch ein Wort von der Chassam Sofer geist mir sagen. Noch ein Wort von der Yismach Moshe. Noch ein Wort von der Brisker Rav. Noch ein Wort von der Arachayim Klayakar. Was geist mir sagen? Right? We shut down. We become old. We become old.
I told the doctor, somebody has a heart attack. You see that light.
That sums up the whole series.
He has a rebirth after.
You're in the barn? What happened? You didn't even make one comment today. You didn't even make one comment today. We're going to continue now with the Gemara.
He's saying that the Rebbe was as hard as he was on everybody, on himself.
It's a chiddush, much more. Double, triple, 10 times.
I was going over the things that he's demanding for us. I was thinking about it. Like,
It's not even close. The Rebbe once told one of his secretaries, he said, before I ask anything from the Olam, I first think to myself if they're capable of doing 50% of what I ask for. And then I speak about it. Yeah? Not even 100%. First, I think many times over if they're capable of absorbing and doing 50% of what I ask. So once the Mr. Nemena was verbringing, and he said, how many things were we not zoiche to hear from the Rebbe because he thought that people won't even do 50%. It's a chassid's response. How many things did we lose out because we didn't think we're ready even 50%. That itself, that's the process. No. A new slate doesn't mean I take a sledgehammer and I knock my brain out. A new slate it's an inner place. You understand? It's not, you can't force it. Say, okay, now I have a new slate. What do I do? A new slate is just a complete commitment and readiness. It's a very...
you don't have difficulty of Habushas, you know, I'm learning, you have to have a real,
a lot of chavrusas taka are not...
When you let the Chavrusa speak, do
situation is the biggest challenge. Because the amount of information,
Yeah. Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Anytime they bring this information, any old source that they used to trust comes back and break them.
Yeah.
Become
Yeah.
empty, and as a result, they shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have no answer for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time they go back to their own Rabbi that they used to trust 100%.
Yeah.
And they will say nonsense.
Yeah.
And they remain ignorant.
Yeah.
And the kids
That's why your question was very deep. Because if the teacher is not ready to do that to himself, he will lose the student.
They all lose this.
Yeah. The first one to do it has to be the teacher. And maybe that is what makes him the greatest teacher, that he's ready to do this more than the student. What allows him to be a teacher? What puts him in the position of a teacher? That he's the first one ready to say, I'll change everything.
He is ready to be challenged.
If not, then it's a joke. Then it becomes a mockery. Then he himself becomes the greatest interference to his own wisdom.
And unfortunately, all the kids that I know that have any intelligence, they shut up. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to balance the old good that they found in Torah with a new evidence of
Like, Rabbi, what you said yesterday, one show was there, that I do, you can see a lot of kids, a lot of kids that that kind of addictions, is when they go back to the triggers, it's because their parents did not believe in them.
Yeah. But this is very true what you're saying. Students or children come with new ideas, fresh ideas, powerful new ideas, whether in science or physics or psychology, and all the teacher can say is garbage, nonsense, and then they spirituality also, just follow me. And it's like, so one of two things happen. Either they have to numb a certain part of their creativity in order to belong,
which is they don't do very well.
At least your kids don't do it. Some kids do it, unfortunately. Or they have to detach. Like there's no trust anymore. Rebbe Zriel tafasta? Katafta? Efotim tzadza? Afmakna? Lotim tzadza. Haloi metorah yelad. I'll ask a question. I've given shiurim for many years. There's two types of people that come. There's people that don't come. Okay. There's people that don't. There's people that come, to try it out. How entertaining is Rabbi Why? Somebody tells me, he says, I try to listen every day, but there's not enough jokes, and that's it. Fine. Okay. Yesterday I finished the shiur, whatever it was, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I leave. Somebody says, thank you for the entertainment. Okay, fine.
Your jokes are funny even at 1.5 speed. I listen a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. But there's two types of people who come and listen. One person I see is their life changes from the ideas, from the truth. Their life, they're just transformed. And they they're mesmerized by the information. They're like with an open mouth, so to speak. And others can't get to that space. It's not there. It's like, it's nice, it's good, I like it, it's good stuff. What's the difference between the two? It's not that one is more or less intelligent than the other. They're both very intelligent. For one, there's mamash a transformation. Yeah? Mamash. There's a few people who sit or listen virtually. I get messages from them. It's like oxygen. They allow the power of the ideas to penetrate them and remake them constantly. And others don't. It's a very powerful idea. Der heißt für sich sagen? Huh?
I see him, I was an open mouth. Yesterday I watched
and closed eyes.
I watched more him than you.
has to do with age. The older you are, the less.
I love it. That's what the mouth
He teaches his father how to listen.
I observed him yesterday.
Mitalmidei Yosem Mekulam.
He was coming to the 2 hours. I told him when he first came to the church, I said there was a man coming to this year 9 months ago, and there's another man coming to this year now. He said, what do you mean? I said, that was the same person.
Beautiful. Panam Chadash is Ba'olaka. But it's a fascinating thing. And you can't force this on somebody. You can't say, allow the material to reinvent you. You can't tell that to somebody. Because if it's coming from somebody else, it's not reinventing. It's a very deep process. It's really allowing truth, allowing Ein Sof to reinvent you. Wow, it's amazing. And once that happens, it never stops. Because infinity will not stop reinventing you. Because if it does, it's not infinite.